Hello, this is going to be a video about how to join your GA4 with your Search Console data. What we want out of this is maybe we want to get them both on the same graph, maybe we want to get really interesting numbers like revenue per keyword, conversions per keyword. We want to get all of that good stuff and we're going to walk through how to get it today. This video is going to be split into a couple of chunks. So initially we're just going to talk through the why, we'll talk through that in a bit more detail. Then we'll give you the practical example, show you the Looker template and the little tool we built to help you accomplish this. If you're just trying to do it quick, sort of one-off run through. Then we're going to talk through the maths and how this actually works in the back end, practically what we're doing. And then finally, we're going to talk through the problems. We're going to dive into the horror of time zones and go through that side of it and what you sort of want to think about a bit more if you want to do this on a repeat process. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, so we're going to begin with the why. Why join your GA4 with your Search Console? This is an example of a Search Console dashboard template that we have, but we've done this, and I think it perfectly illustrates some of the points here, which is that having revenue and signups and conversions and things like that in with your Search Console data is just going to make everything more compelling. Because at the end of the day, we care about, we run websites and we run businesses for the purposes of money and for getting people to sign up to things. We don't typically run it just for these vanity metrics of impressions and clicks. So these are great, because they lead us to this, because this is a funnel, right? That we have impressions and that leads to clicks and that leads to signups and revenue. Or over here, we've got the unique number of pages with impressions, the unique number of pages with clicks, and then signups and then revenue. If you imagine the same dashboard with these bottom two pieces gone, the whole thing is just far less compelling. So that's our first reason why we're putting them there. Having scrolled slightly further down this dashboard, we come down to the page breakdown, right? And this is obviously, it's great to have page with clicks and impressions and revenue. But the thing that we really care about is query, right? This is the other big thing we can get from here. And it's obviously an estimate when we get to here, but being able to estimate revenue per query, really valuable. Now, in this case, these numbers are nonsense because this is from our sort of fake data that we essentially put out here to show dashboard templates to customers. But fundamentally, when you take this and, we put it through, when you run your own data through the same process, what you're going to get is some really, really valuable numbers. It's going to allow you to be more compelling. It's going to allow you to make better business cases. If we hop over to here, we can see an example of how just having revenue at a keyword level makes certain kind of business cases and things more compelling. These, for example, are a set of keywords that we rank for with a particular t-shirt page. And so we can see generic keywords like t-shirt and buy t-shirt. And then we can see some color variants. We can see some summer variants or some seasonal variants. And having revenue assigned to these means that we can come along and say decisions like, okay, should we perhaps take our widget and make it more explicit types of colors that are available so we think will perform better for those? We'd say, what might the impact of that be? Being able to essentially say, okay, it's these three keywords, this is an estimated amount of revenue. It's just going to allow us to weight some of these things and decide, help prioritize those decisions. And if we do want to make this business case, or if we think this is already a good idea, putting money and revenue by their business case is just going to make it immediately more compelling. Now, there are some other things that we can get into here. Just for example, having Search Console and GA together helps you do things like debug analytics and stuff like that. And if you're joining with AdWords, being able to get revenue via keyword from both organic and from paid ads is very, very helpful for some optimization decisions there. But yes. Anyway, we're going to hop practical at this point into some examples and how we actually go about doing this process. Okay, so that was the why. Now we're going to move on to the sort of the conceptual overview. We're just going to try and explain from a real top-level viewpoint, what are we trying to do here and how are we going to accomplish it? So we're just going to walk through a diagram and show you practically how we might go about doing this. Okay, so conceptually, what are we doing? Firstly, we're going to take GSC and we're going to take GA4 and we want to download data for both of those. So for GSC, we want to download a table with these 4 dimensions, right? We want to download a table with device, country, page, and date, and with the following metrics, clicks, and impressions. That's basically every dimension that is available within Search Console. Then for GA4, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go download a table with device, country, page, and date, and whatever metrics we're looking to split up by query. So that's almost certainly going to be your conversions to revenue, and it might be something else like sessions as well. Then what we're going to do is we're going to join these 2 tables. We're going to blend them, join them together based on these shared dimensions. And that's going to give us this joint table of GA plus Search Console. At this point, we now have to get our breakdown per query. However, query only exists in Search Console. It doesn't exist in GA. So we're going to use some percentage ratio breakdowns to generate our final keyword breakdown data source. Right, that's our top level example of how we're going to do it. So now we're going to talk through an example of this using some Looker Studio templates and a little app that we built for you guys, just so you can kind of see how this process might work. Okay, great. So that's the conceptual stuff. Now we're going to talk through a practical little example of how to go about doing this with the Looker Studio template and some additional tools. If you do want to go and do this on a sort of more consistent basis, if you'd like to have this built into your reporting and your pipelines, please get in touch with us. This is the sort of thing that we do every day. We build data warehouses for SEO teams and marketing teams, and we can build these sort of pipelines and get you all of these numbers without any of the hassle or the problems that we see, and we're going to talk through in this video. But yes, so let's hop into the example. Okay, so to begin with, we're just going to open up the template that we've got over in the resources section, and we're going to make a copy of it. If you want to make your own template, better understand how this chunk of it works, we've got a section in the video later on where we're going to talk through that. But to begin with, we're just going to show you how to do it. So we go ahead and we make a copy over here. We're going to plug in our own Search Console and our own GA4 over here. At that point, we've got our report loaded up. As we come down here, we'll see our Search Console on the left-hand side, the GA4 on the right-hand side. We'll see an initial join through of the data here, and we'll see our blended data this time getting ready to hop out of Looker Studio and do the final part of this process. So if all we want to do at this point is just to get Search Console and GA4 in the same place, right? If we just, to hop back to this report, if we're just looking to try and generate this to get our impressions, clicks, signups, revenue, and that sort of thing on the same report, we can just stop right here. We can hop into this report. We can take our blend here. We can remove query from the blend, and you're good to go. And just use this example blend, use this in your report, use this as a template to go copy to put into something else. However, if you would like to continue onwards and to get this sort of breakdown of revenue or conversions per query, we're going to pop down to this bottom table instead. Now for this example, I've got this configured just to a single day because this makes the dashboard open very quickly when it opens. So you guys can immediately see kind of what's going on. However, if you're doing this for, to actually get some results out of this, you're almost certainly going to want to increase this so it is no longer just set to March the 7th. So yes, you're going to pop into the report. Once you've made the copy, you're going to edit it, increase the date range on this table to as long a date range functionally as this next step and the next part of this is going to handle. Then we're going to head into here and we're going to export our data. We're going to export it and we're going to download it. So let's pop in here and export this, and we'll just save that to desktop. Then we've built this little Streamlit app. This little Streamlit app here is going to, let's just clear the old results away. This little Streamlit app here is going to take that export from Looker Studio, and it's going to fix our last piece of maths that we essentially can't accomplish in Looker Studio, and it's going to turn that into our output. So we're going to take our sort of public set over here, drag and drop this into here. We now see our data that's been exported from Looker Studio. It's going to automatically take guesses at all of the different columns. So for this script to work, it needs to know the URL, the device category, the country. It needs to know all those sorts of things. If you're putting in other kinds of data into it, you will have to manually select these. However, if you're exporting from Looker Studio, it should just correctly guess all of them. And then finally at the bottom, you pick which columns do you want to break down by query. So in our case, we've only got sessions, and it's going to go ahead and run that Python in the back end and give you an output. You can get this output day by day, in which case we'll leave a lot more of the sort of working out columns here. But for practice for most people and for sort of running these initial one-off pieces of analysis, which is what this is perfectly well suited for, I would keep this ticked here. It's going to group, it's just going to give you the aggregate result for the entire period of time. So we can go ahead and download this. Once we've opened this, fantastic, here we go. We've got our Search Console data, our URL, country, device, query, with clicks and whatever estimated breakdown we have over there. At this point, great, we're good to go. Now, in this case, because if you have a very small website, or you've picked a very small period of time, what you're going to see is the differences between GA4 and Search Console are going to be really magnified. And we can see that here with the example of the Pipedad data, because Pipedad is both a small website and I picked a single day. So unlike when you run this with many of our customers and things like that, what we're going to see here is that we're going to see that, for example, on this one March the 7th, GA4 thought that we found 9 sessions, essentially. It's actually slightly more than that because this is broken down by keyword now. Found about 9 organic sessions broken down by United States desktop. However, if we pop over to here, we only found 1 or 2 over in Search Console. This is because we picked a small date range and this is a small website. the way you want to fix this problem and reduce this sort of like noise is you just want to put in more data. So if you have a really small website, this is definitely going to be a bit less effective. Or if you pick a really small date range. So pick a bigger date range and use this ideally on a slightly larger website than we are. Fantastic. So at that point, that's how you go through and use this. Now I'm just going to hop through and we're going to talk about what exactly this is doing on the back end. So if you're trying to better understand this or create it yourself, you have a bit more understanding to go with. Great, so hopefully you're able to have a go at the example, or you just want to sort of keep going on. Now we're going to talk through like the why the example happens, why we do the bits that we did, what is happening and what's the math that's going on behind with the ratios and things like that. So we're just sort of going to talk through this. Again, a lot of diagrams just to hopefully help you pick apart what's going on here. So what have we got here? Let's go in and edit and have a play. Firstly, we've gone ahead and added two data sources to this. We've got GA4 and we've got Search Console. In this case, we're just doing it for the piped out site. That does mean for this example, because we haven't got around to setting up any conversions for the piped out site yet, we will just be splitting sessions up by keyword rather than conversions or revenue, but it's hopefully still enough to kind of work with here. So we can just see that we've added these two different data sources here. Now, obviously, Search Console and GA4 report slightly differently. They are not perfect mirrors for each other. They gather data in slightly different ways. So, for example, here we can see that although the ratios look relatively similar here, the absolute numbers are not exactly the same. And again, that's what we'd expect to see. These are different things and they report in slightly different ways. We are absolutely doing estimations here. And to use my favorite Will Critchlow phrase, we are doing business, not science. So then we're going to come down and we're going to blend the two of these together here. So if I pop over back into here and I head into manage blends, we can take a look at our blend. What we've got here, so in this case, we're building those tables that we just conceptually talked about in the last bit, right? We've got date, country, landing page and domain, and device. And we've got both of these on both sides. And we've also got query on the Search Console side. Now, two of these are slightly non-standard that we should just have a look at. So these are not the direct normal bits that we've loaded from here. These are custom fields. The first one is device, and we have lowercased it on both sides. This is because Search Console by default gives you uppercase, so it will say desktop all in caps, and this will say desktop all in lowercase. So just to be sure this is working, we have lowercased either side of it. Secondly, over here, Search Console by default will give us https www and the full domain. So over here, we've gone ahead and just added this in here, concatenated these two together. I believe you can also do this with full URL, but we found sometimes the Looker Studio connector seemed to be unhappy. So just to be sure, we've done that. We've also over here, remember GA4 contains all of our data, not just our organic data. So we filtered it down just to the Google data, down to our session medium is equal to organic and session source is equal to Google. And then finally, just to remove some bad rows, sometimes we get some not set rows for landing page in GA4, so we have excluded those as well. And then that gives us all of our data. The date range is auto, and those are our two tables then built. Then here we're going to run into the join. So we have just joined all of these one-to-one, date to date, country to country, landing to landing page, device to device. And we've set that to full outer join. Right, that's pretty much it for this part. That's our connection here. Then we've gone ahead and blended these together. We can then see some example of our blended data here, which if I go to view will be a little bit more easier to see. We can note a couple things from here. The first one is that Search Console and GA4 do not exactly always agree on which pages get traffic. So for example, here we can see that Search Console thinks that we got some clicks to this page, whatever this might be, desktop, mobile, tablet, and we can see that the device on GA4 is null. That's because GA4 never recorded a session here, but Search Console recorded the click. So they're just not going to agree. This will typically happen at the bottom end at your long tail of stuff. This typically doesn't happen towards the top end in your more useful pages. But if you get pages with a click or a session here, you may get a little bit of these discrepancies as possible. Again, we're estimating here. It's also, this is a good reminder here, it's also that to do with Search Console reports canonical URLs getting traffic and GA4 doesn't. So again, if you have vast canonical problems, and we'll come on to this in the issues phase of this, you're going to get more errors here and more nulls. Secondly, you'll also note that sessions is a lot larger here. It's larger than, if you know your sessions well, you'll probably be looking at this and going, this is way higher than what I was expecting up here. And we can see here that, for example, we're now 245 here, and over here we were a mere 128, so we basically doubled it. That's because If we come back into here and we head back to our blend, we can see that inside the blend, we've added query this side and there's no query this side. This functionally means that when we join these things together based on these 4 things, if we have 4 keywords that rank for one combination of date, country, page plus device, we're generating 4 rows over here. So we're multiplying sessions by a factor of 4. So initially at this step, before we've gone and done our initial maths, we're going to be getting multiple rows here. And at this point, Looker Studio no longer gets us any further than this. This is the point where Looker Studio is now going to collapse in on itself and stop working. Okay, so at this point in the example, we now hop back to the Streamlit app and when we let this do all of the work. You can obviously go examine the code for the Streamlit app, but at this point what we're practically going to go and do is we're going to go and just talk through an example of how this maths is working so you can kind of sort of at least conceptually understand what's going behind it. And you can always go and dig into the code if you would like. In this really example, what we've got is from our GA4, we've got the following data. We've got device, which is desktop. For this URL, we get 30 sessions and 2 conversions. When we go to our search console, we see that, okay, for this same URL on desktop, we got 2 separate queries that we ranked for. T-shirt drove 13 clicks and green T-shirt drove 14 clicks. This again is not going to exactly line up with sessions, but we go, okay, great. Some of these T-shirts drew conversions. We don't really know how they're broken down, and in this case, there's no way to know, right? All this information is shared. We can see, yep, the desktop, the URL, and all we know is that, we got 30 sessions here, and somehow that was broken down between this. However, as we add in more dimensions, sometimes what's going to happen is we're just going to slowly add more and more clarity to this picture. So now what we've got is we've got exactly the same data, but we've added in country breakdown. So in this case now for GA, we've got desktop T-shirts again, and in the United Kingdom, we get 15 sessions and 2 conversions. And in the USA, we get 15 sessions, but no conversions. So if we then come down here to Search Console and we look at this and we can say, okay, great. And we add in country to here, we can see that the word T-shirt from the United Kingdom drove 13 clicks. And the word USA with green T-shirt drove 14 clicks. But we know that GB is the only place that got the conversions, in which case this T-shirt is responsible for these 2 conversions, and the US one was responsible for no conversions, this keyword green T-shirt. By adding in this extra dimension, it's suddenly become more apparent where the conversions belong to. Now again, you could imagine a scenario where, again, we got to here and all of these dimensions are still the same and we still don't get any further breakdown. That absolutely can happen. But fundamentally, that's the goal of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to find as many shared dimensions as possible. We're trying to join on as many dimensions as possible. So on device, on URL, on country, on date. And by doing that, we're going to generate more scenarios like this, where we can, with some more clarity, say, yes, I believe this URL drove this number of conversions. And for anywhere we can't, when we really get stuck to the final end of that, we're going to come down to some, and we do come down to somewhere like this, and there's no more dimensions that we could add in. At that point, we would just simply have to say, okay, great. We can look at the ratio between these 2 clicks here. We can apply that ratio to the conversion and say, okay, there is approximately 0. I believe that would be like 0.48 or something, and then 0.52 conversions here. And we could break that down. But yes, that's fundamentally what we're trying to do here. By joining on as many dimensions as possible, we're trying to generate scenarios like this. And where that isn't possible, we're going to put in this ratio right at the end. Great, so that's the basic bits of the maths and how this works, and how the sort of Looker Studio template was set up. Finally, we're just going to talk through the problems. Hooray! We're going to talk through the things that kind of can trap you and cause you some issues when doing this method. We've kind of mentioned some little stuff here where it's like, oh, if you have a small site, it's not going to be quite as accurate. In this case, we're going to talk about some problems that are unfortunately a little bit larger and how we might go about fixing those. Okay, so the first problem is that the Looker Studio native connector, or if the API, if it's not used to its fullest extent, won't give us enough data. And that lack of data will cause this maths to go badly wrong. Now, obviously, all of this is an approximation, but like this is a, this will like absolutely ruin the approximation. So let's give a quick example here. What we've got is we've got 2 different methods here. So we've got a customer that we work with that piped out, and we've got all the queries that when we've downloaded the data using this sort of different method of getting all of the data out, and then we've got the native connector for Looker Studio over here. We'll talk more about how you can go and do this in a separate video. I think that should be up now, and we'll link off to that from the description here. And you can kind of read about what exactly is happening there. But for this video, we're just going to talk you through the practicalities of it. So we can see here that for March 2024, what we're seeing is that firstly, here we're seeing 80,000 different unique queries. And with the default connector, we're only seeing about 236,000. And this applies at virtually all levels of this. So in this case, we're not even looking by query, we're just looking by page, which is what's about to become important, which is that we're looking at the clicks for a single page for t-shirts from desktop traffic. So we can see when we use this full method of downloading the traffic, we're getting approximately 259 clicks coming through here with the Pipe extended connector. And then with the native connector, we're seeing just 794 clicks. This is just another way of essentially showing it. This chunk of red here, this is data that is just not given full data on when you use the default Look Studio connector. And this yellow chunk here is where you do get all of your dimensions, your query, your page, and your country dimension. And our goal here by bringing in more data is to fill in this gap. Because if we don't fill in this gap, it's going to cause these maths to go wrong. So let's hop back to the Excali drawer and we'll show you how that maths works. Okay, so here's a simple example to just talk through it, because yeah, it is a bit of a noodle boiler, this one. So, imagine we've got our hypothetical e-commerce site, and here we have page t-shirt. We rank for two different keywords on that page, so men's t-shirt and green t-shirt. Men's t-shirt gets 30 clicks, and the second one gets 20 clicks. So when we join that with GA4, we can see 10 conversions for this combination of page plus dimension. We're going to take that and split this by the ratio that we talked about earlier on. So we're going to say 6 conversions, 4 conversions. Great, no problems, right? Except, of course, for all that data that we just talked about missing. This might actually be what's going on here, right? We've got this big other chunk. Our t-shirt page gets 30 clicks for this keyword, 20 clicks for this keyword, but it gets another 50 clicks over here for long tail keywords that Google basically doesn't give us because of cardinality or privacy reasons. And in that case, if we're joining these conversions in on here, if we don't account for this extra 50% of conversions that are going to the long tail, we've overestimated, we've doubled the number of conversions here that are assigned to each of these keywords. Like, again, all of this is an estimation, but it's an okay estimation unless we miss out this chunk, at which point it's a really bad estimation. So that's our first bit. If you don't have the ability to go and get this extended data, what we broadly recommend at this point is to essentially go through the methods we talked through in that other video to sort of essentially show the level of sampling that you've got, figure that out as a ratio, and just flat apply that to list numbers. So if you discover that you're missing, let's say, 40-60% of your data, whatever this percentage is here, right? In this case, it's quite severe for this site. The bigger and more long tail, the bigger your site is, the more long tail your site is. The more severe this ratio is going to be. But so in this case, we can see that maybe sort of 60% of the data is being lost. So we should reduce these numbers just by a flat 60%. That's not going to be perfectly accurate, but it's a nice, quick little fix to sort of get you more towards the truth. If you can't go and do the extended method, again, we talked through that in another video. But yes, so that's our first big problem. If we don't account for that, we can massively overestimate the number of conversions or revenue that an individual keyword is driving. The second problem. The second problem is canonical URLs. You see, here's the thing about Search Console, right? When it says you got to click from Google, it doesn't mean you got to click from Google onto the exact page that is shown in Search Console. It takes those and it groups them by canonical URL. So suppose that we have these two pages on our site, right? T-shirts, and then a product page of t-shirts, and then a variant of that where it's like, okay, you've clicked some forms on the page and it's said, okay, I want the green t-shirt in size medium. And we're building that URL with parameters. Suppose we accidentally index this page and, we get some sessions from it. In GA4, this will show like this. We would show, okay, these were the, when the correct page was, the correct version of our page was ranking, we got 3 sessions of that. But then we did our canonicals wrong. Maybe we didn't have them, or there's some issues with it. And in this case, this page ranked and it got 2 sessions as well from organic traffic. In Search Console, all of these clicks will show as coming through to the canonical URL. So if you have set up your canonical, even if Google isn't, if it's not being put through, you will see these clicks being like misassigned. There basically isn't much you can do about this. The main thing to notice is that if you have a bunch of canonical URLs and you have a bunch of canonical issues, this data is slightly less accurate. Typically, this is not a huge factor for most of them. It's just something worth bearing in mind, particularly if you come to these long tail sort of parameter variants and you're seeing a lot of variation differences in where it's coming. This is probably where it's coming from. Okay, so problem 3, time zones. Everyone's least favorite problem. Yeah, let's just dive into this one. This is a bit of a gnarly one. So the problem here is that Search Console will only ever report in PDT time. You cannot get it to report in anything else. I mean, if you already live in PD time, fantastic. If you're in California, great, not a problem, move on, skip this. However, for people who are not there, you've probably configured your analytics, your GA4, your AdWords to all run at the time zone the way you are based. So at the moment, I'm based in London, and if you'd set up a website in London, you'd probably be setting up at GMT 0, or sorry, GMT or UTC 0. That means that these will then not perfectly align. So April the 25th in my GA4 will include April the 25th in my Search Console, plus the hours of 4 to 11 p.m. from April the 26th. Okay, yeah, that's a bit janky, not ideal. What do we do about this? The thing you want to think really hard about here is how much of this is actually going to be a problem and how much this is going to be a problem to affect you. I think there are two big things which can swing you towards wanting to fix this. The two big cases where you probably want to go and fix this are, firstly, do you not have AdWords? If you don't have AdWords and you're in an area where your queries change quite a bit from day to day, because what you probably will see is that if there is a lot of seasonality, if for example you work in news or something like that where freshness is really important and the queries that people are searching change a lot from day to day, then yeah, okay, you're almost certainly going to want to shift this. And GA4 will give you data. It will give you timestamps that you can work with by the hour, so you can successfully line these two up. So that's the first case in which you almost certainly want to do this. Also, if you happen to be the antipode, I believe, of PDT time zone is the middle of between Africa and Australia. So if you live on a small Pacific island there, you almost certainly want to shift an entire day rather than shifting an hour. And if you're in Australia, I suspect your business hours may overlap more notably if you just shift everything an entire day. So those are the kind of the scenarios where we recommend shifting this. Incidentally, in order to shift this, you will either have to download Hour from the API in GA4 in order to kind of take that and tie that in, or you'll have to be working with the BigQuery export. You won't be able to do that in Looker Studio. I think that would just be too much for Looker to handle. If you don't have that, however, there are some other negatives. So, with kind of doing this, the first one is: are you also tying with AdWords? Many of the customers we work with, they tie with GA4 and Search Console, but they also want to add their AdWords into there and get that fully joined up picture. If you do that, AdWords also works like GA4, so both GA4 and AdWords tie together. However, they both tie together on the same time zone that's being configured, but AdWords will not give you the hourly timestamp in the same useful place that GA4 gives you. That means that if you shunt this clock in order to line up with AdWords, or in order to line up with Search Console, you will have unlined up AdWords. Only ever one of them is going to be right. You're always going to have something that's wrong there. And also, if you end up shunting these time zones, the other big problem that you'll run into is that if anyone ever looks through the business and they happen to look at just your standard Search Console or GA4 interface, a Looker report is a data warehouse is not perfect for everything. Sometimes you're just doing an exploration. What you'll find is those numbers will not align with this anymore because now in your reporting you've shunted everything by 8 hours. And so that's going to cause a whole bunch of basically disconnects there. And typically that leads to things like people won't trust your data, you can run into sort of organizational problems there, and it can be a lot more hassle than it's worth. So yeah, those are the big downsides with shifting it. And certainly if you're also joining together with AdWords, I'd probably suggest not doing this. Or if you have queries that don't really vary too much from day to day, there's not a huge amount of seasonality there. Again, I just wouldn't worry about it too much. On the other hand, if you do have something that is like day-to-day deals, and again, it has to be day-to-day seasonality because we're only locking 4 hours off. So, like everyone has seasonality, right? Like different keywords at Christmas to different keywords in the middle of the summer. But like day-to-day, those are not going to change very much and we're probably mostly there. Yes, so those are the things to consider here with time zone. You can sort it, particularly if you just have GA4 and Search Console and you have no desire to collect AdWords and you have either query freshness or you're notably further off in time zone. This is maybe something to consider doing, but yes, otherwise it's just something to be aware of. Finally, we just want to, let's just be really clear about this. When we're doing this, this is an estimation. Our goal here is to do business, not science. It is not to have the perfect, accurate 100% data. This is to help us build better business cases, argue for things, put more compelling numbers forward to the rest of our business, and to better estimate those numbers. We're not going to be able to do any of, we're not going to get exact 100% things here. This is a ratio, right? The assumption that we're making here is that, these conversion rates are equivalent, right? That clicks perfectly maps to conversions. And, that just isn't fundamentally, that won't always be true. There will absolutely be conversions that will have a higher chance of converting. And you could go in and you could, fiddle with that conversion rate. We could say long tail terms perhaps are slightly more likely to convert. We can do things like that. But again, I think the thing that's important to remember when we're going through all of this is that what we're trying to do here is we're not trying to get 100% accuracy. We're just trying to build a good business case, prioritize things better, and get all of that stuff better at our jobs. Okay, so hopefully that's been a helpful top-level overview of how you go about joining your GA4 in your Search Console. I realize there's quite a lot to that. I didn't intend to set out and make a 30-minute video on this. Thought it would be shorter. Thought it would be a tight 10. Turns out it wasn't. It's a little bit more complicated. There's a little bit more going on. The thing that I want you to take away from that, and the most important thing, is that your business cases and things like that become a lot more compelling when you put revenue there. When we join that extra GA4 data onto our Search Console, it will just make operating the business easier, because at the end of the day, they typically don't care about impressions or clicks, but they do care about money. And so getting that in is really valuable. If you're just looking to do this at a sort of top-level one-off process, then you can absolutely just go use the Looker Studio template that we talked about, go use the example, and you're going to have a great time with that. If you want to do this more repeatedly, you're going to need something like a data warehouse. As we mentioned in the video, you're going to want to go more towards that. If you'd like, you can come to us for that. This is the sort of thing that we do. We help SEO and marketing teams build and manage data warehouses, and the sort of stuff you've done in the video is the kind of stuff we do every day. But you can also manage it equally well with an in-house tech team, so that's also totally doable. Anyway, hopefully this has been a top-level overview, and yes, we'll see you next time.